I'd like to say good morning to you all. I've been working in the water quality team at Defra for 3 years on the catchment approach. And I have to say, after 3 years of trying to champion the approach, it's really great to see so many of you here now as catchment leads for our catchments across the country. This moment has been likened by someone else to the Avengers Assemble, which is a DC Comics superheroes strip, for those of you that haven't seen it. Personally, I prefer the Great British Bake Off, but that's not the thing at all. I just wanted to take you through the background to our policy framework. Some of you may have heard some of it before. Just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page and also touch upon some of our expectations of you as catchment hosts and our ambition for the future. But please don't feel oppressed by any of that, because the good news is that you're free to do what you can. I suppose by way of background, it's worth starting with only 27% of our water bodies currently meet the aspired standard under the Water Framework Directive of good ecological status. Diffuse pollution accounts for nearly half of the reasons for failure, and tackling diffuse pollution because of its diffuse nature is local, which means working at a local level below river basin, and engaging local communities to understand what the pressures are and work with them to resolve them. So catchment plans will form the basis of the second cycle of river basin management planning that supports the Water Framework Directive. As you probably know, we ran over 60 catchment pilots during 2012, and we used the learning from that to develop our policy framework, which sets out the key principles that we intend to follow, defines the catchment boundaries, and outlines some of the roles. We also use the learning to develop a handbook that summarises the key activities and the key steps that you might follow, supported by real case study examples. Our stated objectives in the policy framework are to deliver positive and sustained outcomes for water, encourage local collaboration and more transparent decision making, and as I say, contribute to the second cycle of river basin management plans. This is underpinned by our shared operating principles, so it's really about being environmentally focused, providing an opportunity for everyone that wants to engage for every water body, and following the principles of being open and transparent and working in a collaborative way. In terms of river basin management planning itself, there are a number of different levels. River basins are a good geography to gather together some of the broader kind of interventions, those things delivered by water companies, for instance. But they really fail to recognise a lot of the activity that happens much more water body level and much more locally. But there does need to be a middle tier to help marshal those more local interventions so that they're targeted in the best place and can feed up into river basin management plans. And that's the management catchment level of which you are leads here today. So the patterned activities around identifying the pressures, debating priorities with stakeholders and agreeing actions. And that's supported by a government mandate to legitimise your working and help engage stakeholders. There's some key roles at the management catchment level, primary amongst which is the catchment lead, which is your role. We see this really as championing the approach and energising stakeholders and trying to broker and encourage more funding. But that's supported by the Environment Agency Catchment Coordinator, who'll work with the Environment Agency operational teams around the actions that they'll take and feed into river basin management plans. But there are also other partnership members that need to be taken into account. We would encourage more businesses get involved in this to elicit more funding. But also Defra's other arm's length bodies can be involved as well, and I'm thinking of CSF from Natural England in particular, so that you can coordinate all actions in a more coherent kind of way. So overall there are 87 management catchments across the country, plus a further 6 in the cross-boundary with Wales. As you know, we sought expressions of interest to lead the catchments, and you were selected. And nearly every single catchment is now covered by a partnership, the large majority of which have one partnership for each management catchment. Where exceptionally we have more than one, we want those partnerships to work together to consider the management catchment as a whole. We've also put in place already a number of elements of support, so the good practice and the handbook that we've developed, provided initial pump priming funding. We're also developing further funding guidance. The Defra's other arm's length bodies are all signed up to this approach and agreed to support it. And the Environment Agency are in the process of developing an IT-based catchment planning system. And stakeholders themselves have already established a knowledge hub of information, guidance and support, and this is being refined further to focus more on the needs of practitioners. But our policy framework is really just that. It is a broad framework to create the right conditions for catchment working to happen. It doesn't specify a lot of the detail, and we recognise that government is not really in the position to be able to do that, nor should it, because it needs to evolve from practice on the ground and practice by those people that really know some of the detail of what's needed. So the process will need to progress and evolve, and our policy framework called for a steering group of practitioners to help guide it and hardwire an intrinsic evaluation and learning within the approach. The kinds of things that the steering group might consider would be things like data and information management, what are the arrangements, what are the common formats for sharing data, helping you to develop your skills and professional training, and providing a support network across catchment partnerships, helping to develop tools such as objective setting and tracking methodologies, as well as providing a really essential two-way communications channel for you to be able to raise issues that you encounter on the ground, agree resolution and cascade them back down. Well, we've provided some initial funding, as I said, 1.6 million in this financial year. The vast majority of that was distributed to you as catchment leads, with a small amount being retained to help develop the tools under the steer of the steering group. But we recognise that that doesn't really add up to very much per catchment, and there's no way that we could consider the amount that we're allocating as acting as a contract for all the things that we would want you to do. So does that mean there are no strings attached? Well, we want you to have regard to our key principles of being inclusive and engaging others that want to. The handbook set out some key steps that we might want you to follow, so that's around scoping the local stakeholders, engaging them, identifying the pressures, agreeing actions, etc. But it's not prescriptive, and recognise that all partnerships will be at different states of maturity and will progress at different stages. However, there are a number of milestones that really act as opportunities for you. So, for instance, contributing to the development of catchment summaries in the spring of next year, working with business companies to spot opportunities and help to broker delivery of more catchment schemes as part of their business plans that come out of PR14, contributing to the consultation and development of river-based management plans, as well as generating your own funding so that you can become self-sustaining after 2015. We will want to assess the value of what we're doing and the ongoing viability of the catchment approach as a whole. So we are planning an evaluation. Some of you who are involved in the pilot are probably familiar with that. It's likely to follow questionnaires, interviews and some deep dives. But most of that is really about establishing the value that's been delivered so far, as well as an opportunity to draw out any further good practice. We also plan a second evaluation before river-based management plans are published, but we will share the evaluation specification with practitioners and stakeholders before we implement it. But recognise that this isn't performance management of you as catchment leads, it's really about assessing the broad approach. In terms of success criteria, well, we hope catchments will show their value to their partners and attract funding. But, you know, being realistic, we understand this is really about steering activities that are already in place so that they add up to more than the sum of the parts. And the main success criteria are those that you yourselves set within your catchment partnerships. The catchment approach we see as a long-term aim that will evolve over time. I mean, at the moment it's focusing on delivering the Water Framework Directive, but we see that it can expand to deliver other water considerations such as flood risk management, water availability, as well as looking further into biodiversity and all our environmental interventions in the round over time. Now that is an evolving approach which is shared by a number of other partners as well, including government. Defra is undertaking activities now to help create the right conditions for that to happen. For instance, we're looking into a framework that might help to broker more paid ecosystem services, which could be something like a trading scheme for nitrates, for instance. We're also looking at how we can better target our CAP and RDP money so that it might be directed by catchments to support their aims in tackling diffuse pollution from agriculture. And we're also looking to see how we can join up across policy areas to integrate more. However, this is really just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that are happening, and I don't really expect it to make much sense to you as it currently stands. I think what I'm saying is that this is an evolving process, and it's likely to be incremental and not necessarily a clear critical path that you can manage through a project. So how can you have regard to that longer term vision? Well, the catchment approach is the largest of a number of place-based initiatives that Defra is operating. They include nature improvement areas and local nature partnerships. But they're all effectively in the same game of trying to raise the value of the environment within society and get society to recognise that and fund the right kind of interventions. Each of these place-based initiatives were set up to tackle a specific environmental pressure, but the catchment pilot's shown that where they are co-located, they can actually dovetail and coordinate. So as an operating principle, we would want you to work in concert with the other place-based initiatives so that over time they can really act together to address components of the same ecosystem. So overall, the messages I want you to take away today are catchments are seen as key to managing the water environment. This is an opportunity for you to determine the future of your river for the long term. We recognise that it takes time to build a partnership, and this is a long game, and this will go through a number of different changes. But we want you to feel that it's your catchment and it's in your hands, but we're also here to help you. So overall, you're free to achieve as much as you can. We would like to see you being unfettered to do that and carry on doing the activities that you already do so well. Thank you very much.